Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and The Death of Doctor Strange, issue number one. Yeah, I really liked this book. I liked this a lot. In fact, I thought it was so good it should have been a comic book. Probably should have been one of those Marvel graphic novels. But we have to see the way that it ends. Can't give it too much praise. It's only the issue one. But it's a damn good issue one. Let's give credit where credit's due, and then we'll talk more about the comic book itself. Jed MacKay is the writer, Lee Garbey on art, Antonio Fabella doing the colors, and VC's Corey Petit on letters. Kari Andrews doing the cover, whole bunch of, a few people. I'd say what, half a dozen people doing variant covers. One of them is a Gene Colan redo. Tom Palmer and Rachel Rosenberg doing the finishes on it. New finishes, I suppose. That's fantastic. I love that. I absolutely love that. Steve Ditko and Stan Lee are the creators of Doctor Strange. Way more Steve Ditko than Lee, but that's by Lee's own admission. So there's that. Anyway, also a special thanks to Tom Brevoort, and I think I could see where some of that stuff comes from. Listen, Jed MacKay, the writer, he's done a lot of really, well, not a lot. He hasn't done a whole lot of comic books, but some of the comic books that he's done, they've been pretty good. I've had a couple complaints about Taskmaster, but at the same time, I've also turned around and loved some of the stuff that I've read, right? You got to know the characters. You got to understand the characters. You got to make sure the characters don't do something out of character. Otherwise, it's not your character anymore. It's just some character. You might as well go to an independent comic book for that. I think that's a lot of why Tom Brevoort was thanked in here, because I imagine, without any proof, without knowing anybody behind the scenes who could talk to me about it, I believe that he must have had a lot of input to add to this. Let's face it, Strange isn't exactly the most popular character out there. That's fine, you know? And look, I'd put my comic book knowledge against pretty much anybody, right? But Tom Brevoort is standing on the other side of me, and there's a bell in between us. I have a feeling his hand's going to be on the bell a lot more than mine. You know what I'm saying? It just, yeah, he's going to recall the stuff quick like it's nothing. He's, I don't think he's an idiot, but he's got that idiot savant sort of quality about that Rain Man quality about it, where he doesn't even have to stop and think and turn his eyes in a certain way. Just ask him a question, he'll stare at you straight in the eyes and just, rattle off the answer as detailed as you need it to be. He's amazing like that. And you could tell by some of the things that were drawn in here, just things lying or strewed around, just little things or things that were mentioned. What is this one thing? The consecration of colors. And it's a weird one because it's spelled the French way with the U in colors. I never remember actually reading about the consecration of colors, but then I look it up and I'm like, oh, Icon, Rings of Radun, Rings of Ragador, and what do you call the purple dimension and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, I'm familiar with these. Okay, I didn't realize that there was a conflagration of colors or whatever they reference to it in here. Cool. When I get stumped, when you say something I'm not familiar with and I got to look it up, that makes me feel really damn good. That makes me feel like, oh, hells yes, I'm in good hands here, and I'm about to be taken for a ride, baby. Let's go. I always talk about how comics were better back in the day, even though some comic books today can feel really great also, can be really great also. But back in the day, they had the pattern, and today they don't. I'm going to stick by that. And if somebody's got a problem with that, that's fine. If somebody wants to say, oh, everybody says that. Yeah, listen, I've always loved ice cream. I didn't like ice cream more when I was a kid than when I'm an adult. I just don't eat it as much now because I know that it's not healthy for me. When I was a kid, I'm like, ice cream is very healthy. It's made of milk. So, I didn't know. I was a dumb freaking kid. We're all dumb kids when we're kids. Jeez, get over it. I did. Became an adult. Took a while, but I got there. Still reading comic books. Shut up. Anyway, so, that's the thing about it. You see the stuff back in the day and you see how much money they were making. I don't want to hear about, no, it's different now. No, it's not. No, it's not. Just in the idea that when they say, oh, we stand by the idea that we're making comic books for kids, no matter what anybody says. Okay, well, then you're making a mistake. Because back in the day, you can look at the Stan soapbox and he's like, we're not making comic books for kids. If kids want to read it, cool. We're making it kid friendly. But we're not writing these stories for kids. We're writing them for adults. And I believe it. When I read the Marvel Comics when I was a kid, people asked me, Professor Bill, why is your vocabulary so good? One of the main reasons is because I used to read comic books. Anybody who's around my age or close to my age, 46 for the record, They'll all tell you, yeah, my vocabulary got a whole lot better because I read comic books, because I used to read comic books back in the day, you know? Just, it felt like the writers were smarter. It felt like they were more educated and they cared more about what they were doing, cared more about their craft, you know? Money be damned, kind of. They were trying to tell good stories and they had the facilities to do so. And this issue, this really felt like it. I almost had to check the date to make sure it came out in 2021. It actually did. You could have told me this came out in the 70s. Mind you, that's before I started reading comic books. And that was a better time than the 80s, you know, for the most part. X-Men wasn't here, but you know what I'm saying. This really felt like that. This felt like it should be a Marvel graphic novel the way that it was written. It was fantastic and hold me beside myself. Damn. The art in here, Lee Garbet does a better job with the pencils than he does with the inks in here. There were several things that were shaded, and I'm very pleased with the shading in the comic book. That being said, I felt like he could have done a better job with his inks. His pencils were fine, but the inks, I wanted to see it better, especially when it comes to faces. Sometimes you'll see things strewn around, or you see a panoramic sky, well, not a panoramic, but you'll see something to the effect of a panoramic background or sky, you know, background, whatever, something along those lines. And they look great. And a lot of the characters in here, Doctor Strange particularly, looks great. Some of the other characters didn't look so good, especially when you're talking about their faces. And that includes Doctor Strange in this. The faces sometimes weren't fantastic. And I probably wouldn't have even noticed if the worst page on here wasn't the first panel of the first page, right? That art on there, a lot of great stuff in the background. The imitation wand of Watum that's there, right? Has the little hooks on both sides, not just on one. Anyway, I thought that most of it was great, but I see the faces and I'm just like, ooh, it's going to be one of those comic books, isn't it? And I wasn't happy about that idea. I quickly got over it, but still, it was there. It's something that I recall. It's vivid enough, you know? Antonio Fabela, fantastic colorist, and I've loved his work for a long time. This comic book was done so well under his hand, it almost looked like he used pastels to do the colors in this comic book, not some digital media thing. I mean, that's how good it looked. It was just fantastic. It's a beautifully rendered comic book as far as the colors are concerned, but even those colors couldn't save the lack of what Garbet did with his, or didn't do with his inks. This is not to criticize heavily on Garbet, just simply to point out there was a bit of a weakness here, and that could have been and should have been better. Yeah, this... Maybe it's just because I wanted more respect to be put on this book because of how good the writing was, how good the story was, and the plot in general. And I feel like it's a character moving forward. So much of this book, man. Wow, I really enjoyed this. Moving forward, I'm hoping that issue 2 is going to be fantastic. I forget if I mentioned it or not. There was a bit of a boring part that I kind of glossed over with the reading. Didn't gloss. I read it, but I forgot what I read because it was kind of boring. There was a lot of exposition in this comic book. It's good for new readers. It's good for old readers. There's some things in here that aren't going to be explained. When Doyle comes up and says, I'm a Faultine, he doesn't bother explaining what a Faultine is. There's only but so much you can do. But he does mention, hey, he's the son of Dormammu. And he's from this race, you know, which is, you know, they conquered the dark dimension. And right now they're in the Strange Academy, which is another comic book that you can read. But if you don't want to read, there's nothing in this comic book that says you're going to fall behind if you don't know this part of the story that happened in that comic book, which is written by somebody else. And I love that. I want you to tell me that there's another comic book out there, but don't make me have to go and read it. Make me curious to read it. Right? That's it. That's your job. That's it. Make me want to read more comic books, and that's on the editor to do that. Make me want to read more comic books. Was it Darren Shan who did the editing? Yeah, Darren Shan who did the editing and on this comic book. There was a lot of really good stuff here, man. And like I said, I'm only harping a little bit on the inks because I just feel this should have been a graphic novel. I don't want to see individual issues I don't even want to see this in the form of a trade paperback. I wanted this to be a hardcover graphic novel. But, you know, we'll honestly see if it's even worth being put in that based off of the second and final issues. Also, there's going to be some extras required in here, like an X-Men and Black Knight crossover tie-in thing, which, really? Okay, let's see what you got. Let's see if they turn Black Knight to stone and or have someone else use his sword to kill somebody because he's not cool enough to do it. Or any of the other little tropes that they do with the Black Knight. I don't know. We'll see. But for now, this issue is good enough that I'm very interested in reading everything else that comes up about the story. Anything else that's tied in with this. Anyway, guys, definitely consider checking this out. If you haven't, do it. If you have, if you didn't like this comic book, please tell me what you didn't like about it, because like I said, man, this was fantastic. Here's to hoping for more in the future. By the way, that's a thumbs up, and you're able to do that right below. Please do that to help me beat the YouTube algorithm and like the video so I can make a buck. Talk to you guys later. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.